jumping through hoops to buy Bitcoin? Frustrated with endless paperwork and invasive identity checks? Introducing Bitcoin Ben Crypto Club's loan program. No KYC required. Say goodbye to the hassle and hello to freedom. Borrow up to $250,000 at as little as 7% interest. Join our community and take control of your financial future. Bitcoin Ben Crypto Club, where privacy meets opportunity. Connect with like-minded individuals and grow together. Visit us today and unlock your $250,000 Bitcoin loan. Your journey to financial freedom starts here.
And we are live. Welcome to the show, folks. Today is going to be a very interesting day because what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to lay out the future of where we are going. And as we go, you're going to see the larger picture because I have to include, oddly enough, you guys know me, so you'll get it, ancient Chinese philosophy and how it leads into Bitcoin. Yeah, that's how long of a thing this is. Because what we have is everything is a philosophy. Everything is an idea. Everything is a system that we have through evolution of thinking has evolved into technology and systems in technology that advance human want in the most efficient way. Humans run off of efficiency and want. Now, want has several different forms. We have greed, we have love, we have envy. Those are all want. Those are all wrapped up in what we want. Those are emotions of want. And what we do as humans is we actually take that want and we want it as efficiently as possible. So let me wrap in ancient Chinese philosophy. All right. We've all heard, well, maybe not all of us, but a lot of us have heard of Confucius, right? Confucius is an old Chinese philosopher, and he came up with the philosophy of Confucianism. I know that sounds weird, but just work with me on this. In early China, there was Confucianism. There was actually something called Taoism, which is a spiritual self-improvement ism. Then the one that no one ever talks about, but is so relevant, is actually, and it was called this in China, legalism. Why do you think China has so many Lees? I'll tie it all together. Legalism and Confucian led to what we call now civilization. Civilization, we have to break that word down. All right, civil. That just means we all like each other, right? That just means we act in a certain relationship to each other. Let's break down civil. What is a civ? A civ is how you filter out something. When you sieve something, you shake it, you agitate it, you sieve it out. Like gold, when you actually mine gold. Well, a civilization is a combination of Confucianism and legalism as a system on top of each other sieves out humans. Right? This is how we filter out through human experience the ones who will work in the system and those who won't. Those who work in the system, as we use Confucius and legalism, we rub those together because Confucius is a philosophy of community. That's what Confucianism is. And those who actually don't align with the consensus of the community are actually filtered out. That's why we call them confused, because they are the confused elements of society who have dropped to the lower level of society, and society has to actually deal with how do we handle the unproductive, the confused of the society. Well, we had a split. This is many moons ago. We had a split where we had one group who said, look, this area of society is not aligning with the generalities and the consensus of the larger society. So let's go to war with that society and assimilate the closest similar cultural people to us. And the others who don't assimilate or resist, we get rid of, we kill them. That's it. That chain of society is no longer valuable to the consensus of the society. Are you starting to hear kind of familiar words leading with Bitcoin? We had a chain of society that went rogue. They actually thought they had a better way to run the blockchain of society. Because what is a blockchain? A blockchain is validated transaction through consensus. Doesn't that kind of sound like culture? Because as we act and as we move through our lives and we work together, we realize some things work, some things don't. What works, we actually build into our culture, and that culture has a generational blockchain that we hand traditions to the next generation. And they are the new blockchain of that society. And then they live their lives, they work in the community, they realize a more efficient way of advancing human want through this works, this doesn't work, this works, this, whatever works, we include into our culture. That's what America was actually built on. That's why we had New York, we had Alabama, we had New Jersey, we had Connecticut, we had Florida, because they were all separate cultures, but we set it up so each culture could learn from the other cultures and then take their ideas and implement it into the overall culture that grew the U.S. so quickly. That's why we really didn't advance as a human or as humans very quickly until America. We were crawling along, we were doing our trades, and we were doing this, and we were doing that. But we didn't really have a culture, a community, a land that was basically a blank slate And we set up a system of ideas. That's why people say the American experiment. That's what we were, is, hey, if we allow individuals private property, what will the productivity outputs actually be when we leverage individual want with reward of private property and exchange of value? And will that lead to a lot quicker advancement? We realized it did, because one guy had an idea of whatever you choose. Another guy or gal saw that product or that system and said, ooh, I can improve on that. I can actually make it more efficient. So then he or she would alter that product and actually make it more efficient. And then they would build that, and then someone else would say, oh, I see a technology that they are using that I could implement in this other area of agriculture or whatever, and that will actually improve the efficiency of this area. Now, let's go back a little bit to legalism. Legalism is what evolved into our legalistic systems we have now. Because prior to that, legalism was, hey, we're the rulers, we are the royalty of this area, we tell you what to do. Well, what they realized was top down does not create a culture. The culture creates the leaders who rise. So they had it backwards. So what we eventually evolved into was, okay, all right, we don't want all of the power at the top of the pyramid, because it isn't as efficient as letting all of these other groups this group here using the legal and the Confucius. Remember, legal and Confucius system combines to create a civilization, sieving out the productive through education and self-improvement goals. So the civilization is, like I've said in the past, it's a legal structure. When I say legal structure, it's a legal structure of general rules. Well, if your general rules are up here, it's only his or her priorities that are the law. We're actually down here and as you look at this, don't look at it as useless, a little less useless, a little more useful, a little more useful, a little more useful, then we get up to the king. There's a larger group in here, all right? Because this area here, and this is what no one ever explains, this area here actually includes this guy, because this is the societal level right here. So this societal level, once they switched to a legalistic and Confucius combination, they used culture, Confucius systems, to generate the legal system, which the legal system was just an enforceable culture norm. That's it. It was a consensus that created the legal code, sound a little bit like Bitcoin, legal code that would have to actually be held with using enforcement, like punishment and jail and exile and all of, because what they were doing was they were creating a civilization. The civilization system through legalism and Confucianism would sieve out the productive and sieve out the non-productives of society aligned with the culture of the consensus. So everyone, including the king, is in this group. He's actually part, he or she is actually part of the consensus that created what we called common law, common consensus law. All right? You got me? So, as everyone, including the king and all of the elites who they think they're elite, but they're not really elite, they're part of the common, they would use the sieving of the system and say, all right, Joe Schmo is going up. So we want to give him, who has shown us he's a hard worker. He follows the common law rules. And so what would we do? We would hire him up into the community. That's where we get the word hire. Because what's this look like? It's a pyramid. This system is a representation of society. That's what the pyramids are. It's a representation of the shape of their society. Now, so he would be hired up into more authority. Then, once he reached here, is he working hard? Is he learning? Is he educating himself? Is he reaching a point where we should hire him up? So we hired him up. Now, when I say we hired him up, what I mean is he aligned with the community and the culture and produced a product or service that the community valued. So he was hired up in wealth. He gained more wealth because he was more productive. And he hired up. And then he kept working hard and he learned more and he produced more products and all of this. Then he got hired up again. This leads to, and this is what America changed. Instead of having royalty, we had hiring up of individuals. And that's why here in America, we say anybody can be president. Anybody can be president. Can you work your way up? Can you create a consensus of agreement on culture with enough of the community to hire you up in an elected election? Well, as you do that, as you elevate these people up, they sometimes, let's be honest, they start to think that they are our rulers. Like, hey, I'm so smart that I elevated myself into society, and now I'm up with the elites, or shall, for those in the know, elites. All right, that's a whole different show. Now, once they've risen up, because you have to remember, in each of these areas, there's competition for that next higher up. So now what we have, and in each level, we have people who will cheat. We have people who will send, let's call it a non-valid transaction, also known as a lie. So they lie their way up, right? Or they do other actions. Camilla, or whatever the hell her name was, Harris, she did other things in order to work her way up. All right. And so then once a lot of people reach this level, all right, they have actually been corrupted in their hirings up. Now, this shows you kind of what happened with Trump. All right, Trump was here. All right, this is Trump. He's successful, he's very profitable, but he hasn't used, and I'm not going to say he's an angel, but he hasn't used the level, I wouldn't even say corruption, more he used influence of incentives to raise himself up. Hey, I'll actually take this land and I'll build a high rise, which will give it more value, which means New York City will have a higher property value near this area because it's a higher valued building. You know, he'd add value. That's what he did. Well, when Trump was elected, he said, fuck all this bullshit. This is the swamp. So he went around that and said, you know what? I'm actually going to receive enough of the consensus of the community because I will share what I feel, what I believe, what I'm seeing, and I'll see if there's a consensus of ideas. Everything revolves around consensus and validation. And in order to have an accurate consensus and validation, you have to have a ledger of record for what works, what doesn't work. Does this work? Put it up. Here's our ledger. Let's put this on there. That works. So then once that single block of validated transactional ideas, then we hash it into the blockchain of our community. We say that's a good idea. Let's include that in our common law structure and our community structure. Remember, community is generational blocks of shit we have proved in the past works. Right? Husband, wife, children, grandchildren, such and such and such and such and such and such, man, woman, child. This is how we organize it. This is how we set it all up. Well, what has happened is sometime between early 200s and the like 900 AD. This system, or this early system, was corrupted, and we no longer looked at this as a consensus. We reverted to kinghood or elites. Well, what happened then is they created money. They created paper money and exchange of value systems. Well, the issue with that is for a long time, everyone had completely different money. You had Chinese money, which early on in China was shells. Well, no one in Italy is going to value a fucking shell off of an island off of China. It was like, great, that's a shell. That's really neat looking. So the globe unified under gold and metals. That's where our initial store of value through Copper Age, Iron Age, the Bronze Age, each of those ages were utilizing the utility of a new metal through alkalism, alkali something. You know what the hell I'm talking about. All right. So as we created a more productive use of each of the metals, we started to realize, we got this gold shit here. It's too soft. We can't use it for a sword. But I'll tell you what, there ain't much of it. Every time we're actually pulling out ore, we get a little bit of this gold shit with it. So then, and this was all over the place, people were learning about gold and then realizing the utility of a common, very valuable metal. And that's what the elites would accumulate. Gold, copper, silver, all of the base of production. Gold, silver, copper. And so then they could exchange value because of the usefulness of the metals. Well, they came to a consensus that the rarest one was gold. So they said, we will value gold and we will implement it into our society as a rarity, special. That's why you get your friends and your family and people like that gold, because it's rare, which is you culturally saying, I value you. I take this rare metal and I give it to you because it's rare and valuable. I'm in a way saying you're rare and valuable. And so once the globe, and really guys, if I explained all of it to you, we'd be here for 3 weeks. And I'm trying to jump over and link it all. So then we reached a global consensus on gold and silver as monetary units. Because there was enough of it, because we had reached a point where we had pulled out enough gold where it could handle the value system of everyone, every country, every culture who dealt in our Silk Road or something like that, right? And that way we could actually have a unit of exchange that we could validate and we could exchange China's goods with Italy's goods, and Italy doesn't have to accept shells, and China actually doesn't have to haul all of their goods that they're going to trade with people in Italy all the way to Italy and say, we got a bunch of shit here. We got some silk. We just got a shit ton of stuff here. What are you guys willing to trade for all our stuff? Then they'd haggle over that. Well, once they implemented the gold agreed upon exchange of value, then what it did was it set the price of gold at the individual exchange. There wasn't a global value of gold. Like people heading from China to Italy, that's a long walk. So they had to earn more gold because of the bullshit they had to go through getting it from China to Italy. Where someone in Italy who just hops out of bed, walks down to the stove and says, hey, I want to buy some of that. All right, that's going to cost you half of an ounce of gold or half of an ounce of silver. Perfect. Fuck, it didn't take me long to get here. I can drag it back to the house, no problem, be good. Where China's, that's why they call it the Silk Road, because silk was so valuable in Italy, textiles, Italy, that the people in Italy would be like, well, hell yeah, how much do you want for that? Here's a bag of gold for a couple of pounds of silk that a bug made. But it's a special bug that was actually genetically modified to produce silk. That's a whole nother story. And so China would be paid more for their goods because it actually costs them more time. That's what's relevant in this whole thing is time, human limits of our lifetime, generations, advancement. So then as we implemented gold, it worked. And we implemented silver, and it worked. But it was cumbersome. Because if you, as all of the cultures grew, they're like, look, we're all running our asses off like individually. We're like, fuck, that's a long walk. Hey, why don't we come up with a shipping lane so we can pile all of our goods, hop in a boat, let the wind blow us, and eventually get over to Italy? Oh, that's a great idea. It's more, what? Efficient. Exactly. So then we had shipping lanes, and we had pirates and shitheads like that, but shipping added risk because the ship could sink. The ship could be grabbed. The pirates could rob the ship. So there was risk involved in shipping. So shipping your goods, you could ship more at a lower per unit price of good because you're shipping in larger bulk. Think of the ship as Walmart and think of the old way as like 7-Eleven, right? Because you're producing something locally, that's a whole, I'm squirreling off again. So they'd ship their goods. Well, on each of the ships, they had goods. Then they had the money, the gold, the silver, to exchange for the goods they're going to bring back. That way, they could ship whatever they produced And they didn't have to have someone on the other side already set up to purchase it. They could take their goods, go to a marketplace, which was usually near the pier, and they would sell their goods at that marketplace at the value of that community, how much it valued your product. That's why silk had a higher price in America than it did in Italy. Because longer to get there, more cost, you're holding the product longer. With silk, you have to have it set up in a certain way so it doesn't decay, all this stuff. Well, this is an exchange of value. And for years, we used gold, we used silver, and shit worked out great. Now, we're moving into a place where most of the exchange of value is digital. How many people have your credit card on Amazon and you say, oh, shit, I didn't know how much I wanted those pink rabbit slippers until I saw them. I must have those pink rabbit slippers next day. You click a button. That exchange is the equivalent of the old days of having someone from China or Taiwan or wherever ship you an individual order of pink rabbit slippers. The cost of transmission of value is lesser. Right now, because you're using your credit card, it's about 3%. That's your transaction fee. Well, now we're reaching the point where so much exchange of value has transferred into the digital form that the old form isn't as what? Efficient. And now the whole world community is now reaching a consensus that we need new money. Plus, our old systems were just a patch. The Federal Reserve System, it was designed to actually be a system that would actually degrade over time the money. Well, now we have this thing called the Bitcoin, which is a store of value. Now, I know there's a lot of people watching this show who are like, Bitcoin only. Sorry, guys, that's not how this works. Because we are not in a revolution of the Bitcoin. We're a niche of it. We are a niche of this larger revolution into technological advancement at a rapid pace. Because now everything moves at the speed of light. So now we sit here and we say, oh God, Bitcoin only. Yesterday, and if you didn't watch my show from yesterday with Jay, go back and watch it. I explained Walmart coin. I explained Costco coin. Well, all of our maximalist friends are going to go, I want a whole Walmart coin. Yeah, well, you ain't the whole fucking world, idiot. All right. What we're going through now is what I talked about earlier. The legalist system, legal system, along with the Confucius system, the community system. Except now we've replaced a human enforcement legal system with what? Code. Code. So now we don't have to rely on a human to trust to run the ledger. Now we have algorithms, we have codes, and code, for those who are coders, know code is law. And once you set remember, legal system is actually based on the consensus of the Confucius system. What's this kind of starting to sound like? What China's doing? Gee, that's odd. That's where this system came from. Confucius, which is what the Chinese culture is based on, and legalism, which originated in China. Now, as we go through this time, what's going to happen is creative destruction, the search for efficiency, the using our personal choice, our individual reward structure and incentive structure to look for what we want to use. That we have the example of the future. Every shit coin that you look at was someone else's incentive. And some shit coins only have 10 people who have that incentive structure. Then you look at a community like Litecoin. Litecoin has a huge community. They'll use Litecoin. Why? Because it aligns with their incentive structure. You have those who like XRP. I'm not one of them. I don't use XRP, but that's irrelevant to XRP. Because the XRP are a consensus community that choose to use that currency. We will find out, is XRP a viable technology in the future of this? Now, I have no problem with XRP. That's a digital token. My issues is with Ripple, the corporation, because I know who runs it and I know their, shall we call it, generation incentives. I'll wrap this up, guys. We're entering into one of the most chaotic times in human history, because we're at a point where we are actually making choices at the speed of light. Where, all right, do I want to invest in Bitcoin? Do I think that consensus is going to grow bigger? Should I join that network of value? Are others going to join that network of value? What are the incentives of the Bitcoin? A lot of us like it because it's a fully decentralized, honest launch, proof of work, which means you have a floor of energy cost that holds up the whole network. And others say, nope, Ripple, XRP, it's faster. Well, so is jumping from a fucking plane without a parachute. Just my analysis. We are going to figure out What do we like more? Do we like Litecoin? Do we like XRP? Do we like Bitcoin? And here's the key. There's no winner. There's never, in the whole history of humans, there's never been a winner. Because there's humans, and humans have opinions. Humans have culture. Humans have priorities and incentives. As long as you have two humans, you'll have conflict. And it isn't that one is right and one is wrong. They have preferences actually based on their incentive structures that they align with culturally. So what I'm basically saying here, I think we all win because we're all going to choose our winners. And whether you're XRP or you're Bitcoin or you're Litecoin, we're all going to win because we're all going to work towards the community and add value to the community of the network we choose. And that's the future we have at us right now. That's what we're going through right now, is a complete free-for-all of ideas. And a lot of people are going to win, and a lot of ideas will actually be sieved through the legal system of the blockchains and go, that system's no good. That's no good. That code, no good. That incentive, no good. And we will whittle our way down. There will never just ever be one, because there will never ever just be one human. So what's important is that you involve yourself in the rollout and the creative destruction mechanisms, which are companies. You involve yourself and you invest in the companies that you see align with your agenda, and you invest yourself, your time, your money into companies, organizations and community that you value. That's the only thing you should be worried about, is the investment of where you're going to put your energy. What world do you want to see? Because right now, it's a roll of the dice because there's so much competition going on. And that's why we launched our clubs, because these clubs are the petri dish of the future advancement of human civilization. And we're all here learning, working hard, investing in mining, investing in hotels, investing in clubs. And what are we doing? We are creating a network of like-minded individuals. That's a community, folks. And a community has power. And that's what you want to join. You want to join like-minded communities and then inject your effort, your time into that community, because we are building the future in real time. AI, robots, that's all coming, folks. A lot of it's here already. They're just improving it for rollout. The world's going to change in the next 4, 5, 6, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And as it changes, we choose the changes. if we have created a community that has enough influence to alter the evolution of this future with things we align with. That's why I and Jay and our organization, it's why we're involved in politics. Everyone's like, oh, Ben, politics, God, I don't want to deal with politics. You know what? I don't either. But we have to replace the old politicians and the old mindset, the old systems with this new true verification systems. That's why Trump and the federal government announced, hey, we're going to put all of our recording information on the blockchain. They're changing systems from human verified information into code verified information through validation. This is huge, guys. This is the equivalent of the first light bulb ever switched on. And it's bigger than that, because these lights, as we switch them on, we're not just have light in our individual room. We have light all over the globe at once with each new idea. I'm going to leave you with this. This is the most beautiful and relevant time in human history, because for the first time, we have the technology to actually form a consensus globally at once. And that global consensus will move us forward, because we're going to choose our store of value. And that store of value, as we evolve through this, priorities are going to change. As you guys watching this right now, as you actually get more and more wealthy because you're investing into the communities that are creating the new system, as you guys get more and more wealthy, it's going to reach a point where it's no longer about the money. Because it never was about the money. What it was actually about was your culture, your incentive structure, what you believe in, who you are. That's the real value. Now we're just learning who's in our network and who we want to exchange with. All right, everyone, let me wrap this up real quick. Here at our clubs, we offer loans to purchase Bitcoin. I highly recommend you give us a call today, 941-413-6920, because you're not just actually buying Bitcoin, you are actually purchasing the building blocks of the future system. How much influence do you want in the future? Because the more you buy today, the more influence you have in the future. If you want to change the world, change the money and change your money. Give us a call, 941-413-6920. Shut this off and give us a call now. The number is scrolling right down here. Love you guys, and I will see you guys on Friday, tomorrow, We'll have Jay here. I'll see you guys on Friday. Love you guys.
Woo!
Tired of jumping through hoops to buy Bitcoin? Frustrated with endless paperwork and invasive identity checks? Introducing Bitcoin Ben Crypto Club's loan program. No KYC required. Say goodbye to the hassle and hello to freedom. Borrow up to $250,000 at as little as 7% interest. Join our community and take control of your financial future. Bitcoin Ben Crypto Club, where privacy meets opportunity. Connect with like-minded individuals and grow together. Visit us today and unlock your $250,000 Bitcoin loan. Your journey to financial freedom starts here.